afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here again today. Esau Kamara, lecturer from the College University of Sierra Leone. I am in charge of social stratification and also social research. I'm here this afternoon to continue with dissertation writing. That is how to write a dissertation. This is a crisis, a period. Students are now writing their dissertation at this particular time. This lecture would be also useful to postgraduate students. How to write your dissertation. What are the variables to be considered? What are the elements to be considered? What are the steps to take into consideration? So they are useful for postgraduate students and undergraduates. Now I have dealt with chapters 1, 2, 3. Chapters 1, 2, 3, I've dealt with those chapters in our previous lessons. Then also, I gave some tips of how to go about preparing questionnaires to be administered, especially when you are writing a quantitative research or even triangulation, that is writing both qualitative and quantitative. Now I imagine at this particular point that you have administered the questionnaires prepared for the respective respondents. I assume you have administered and collected the questionnaires from the respondent at this particular stage. So therefore today, I'm going to deal with chapters 4 and 5. Chapters 4 and 5 respectively. That is why I said you must have administered the questionnaires to the respondent and collected them. If not all of them, but you may have collected 80 or 90% of the questionnaires administered to the respective respondents. The efficacy of the questionnaires administered to the respondents could be applied or is seen now in your chapter 4. So your chapter 4 goes along with your questionnaire. Taking cognizance of your data analysis. Don't forget, the questionnaires you have administered to the respondents, you have administered to the respondents. Those questionnaires should now be analyzed using chapter 4. So chapter 4, the caption normally is presentation of data analysis. Data analysis and results. Presentation of data is a data analysis and results. Presentation of data is different from the result. You are presenting exactly what you have got from the respondent. You are going to now analyze and quantify the questionnaire using our variables, frequencies, pie charts, etc., for quantitative research. But chapter 4 is also a major fundamental departure with respect to other disciplines. Like for example, liberal arts, who are doing literature, may not be required to quantify or bring about frequencies and table. That is why I said chapter 4 may be also another fundamental departure. The BA students or liberals or liberal arts may now tend to adopt the qualitative approach, not using tables now. That makes the work very easy for the BA student or for qualitative researcher, because purely the research according to their discipline is descriptive. They are not going to quantify anything else. They just flow what we call essay writing for the BA student, but depending on the topic you are doing the research. Linguistic students may adopt both qualitative and quantitative, especially when they are talking about, for example, tonation, intonation, pitch, etc., or the IPA chart. They may use tables. The medical aspect also is a point of departure. They can use the variables designed in chapter 3 with respect to the questionnaire. They can quantify. But for social sciences purely, social sciences and law, you are bound with the qualitative and quantitative research. Although sometimes also it depends on the research topic. So your data presentation, you are collecting now information from the questionnaires we assume you have administered and collected. You analyze and quantify them now using what you call tables. Chapter 4 normally takes, some one or two variations. Some people may tend to write first introduce by saying 4.1 as the introduction, always 4.1, by saying this chapter presents data analysis and results with respect to the objectives of the studies. Of the study. There again, you are going to outline those 5 objectives. And you should note that those 5 objectives, as I told you earlier, they are reflective or corresponding with the subtopics you have identified in the questionnaire. Because I told you that, for example, objective 1, if you are talking about causes, that one also has to be transferred in your questionnaire for section A. Objective 2, if you are talking about appalling effect, it should be reflected in your questionnaire for section B. On to the end, which is recommendations. So you are not deviating from the questionnaire. You outline those 5 objectives again in your chapter 4. Then you go to 4.2. You are taking out each of the objective. 4.2, you take objective 1, bring it down to 4.2. If you are talking about causes of prostitution in the Western area, write it causes of what? Prostitution in the what? Western area, Freetown. From the questionnaire administered to the respective respondent, the foreign answers were analyzed. You can give a comment like that. Then after that, you must have to bring your table. If it is percentage, you put it. If it is over 100, you draw the percentage. If you look into consideration a particular locality, or if you are talking about prostitution in the western part of Freetown, which particular community you identify it on the table, on top of the table, how many sex, how many you collected also, how many sample did you use also, you have to identify that one. Use those variables because you are quantifying the data. That is what is paramount here. So you have to be systematic. You can take the first objective 4.2, that from the interview you had from the respondent, the data collected are quantified in the following table. You bring the table there. For objective 1, for example, you can bring about 3 or 4 tables. You go to 4.3. If you are bringing pie charts, you have other variables, you are going to quantify that one, that should be 4.3. So always, when you give a short analysis of it, it has to be followed with what? A particular table or tables. You go to 4.4. Short comment analysis, that is your data presentation you got from the respondent, has also to follow with tables of frequencies or pie charts. So you have to go on to the last objective, which perhaps might be 4.6. As I told you, the last objective always should be recommendations, and you don't have to analyze that one in chapter 4. We carry or transfer it to chapter 5 under recommendation. So your data analysis, some people will say, is the most complex aspect of the dissertation. But I told you, if you have administered your questionnaires well and collected data from the respective respondents, and you have quantified them using also frequency and pie chart, you'll find it very simple. Chapter 4 is purely creative. You are not going to input dissertation, the opinion of other writers. It is purely innovative and creative. That is why when some people go and plagiarize from the work of somebody, we can easily identify it, because your creativity is what is important in chapter 4. It's so technical. So you have to exhaust all the 4 points. You listed 5, but you are taking objective 1, 2, 3, 4. And the recommendations, as I said, has to be transferred in your chapter 5. So more or less, your chapter 4 has to do with purely your knowledge, your idea, and that of your innovative. That is why normally I explain to students, you are bringing your chapter 4, bring it along with your what? The questionnaires you have administered, and with your objectives. Because at the end of the day, you are making summary, conclusions, and recommendation. The chapter 4 should be reflective on the summary there. Likewise also for the conclusion. So that is why it has to be systematic. For those who are just writing an essay, for example, for the liberals or liberal arts, they can now use those 5 selected objectives they have stated. 4.1, this chapter presents data analysis and presentation of data analysis and results. With respect to the following objectives below, they list all the 5 objectives. 4.2, for example, if you are talking about to identify causes, write causes of this. For the liberals, now they are not going to be mathematically inclined here. There is nothing to quantify. They can just flow, write an essay on that particular subtopic or one particular objective. That is for the 4.2. They take also the second objective, go to 4.3. The third objective, 4.4. The fourth objective, 4.5. They have to write up to the 4th objective. But for those in the social sciences, you have to be purely innovative and creative. Now, after going through presentation of data, the result, as I said, you have to now bring about a general discussion if you want. There are options. You can bring a general discussion. Some of them bring general discussion when they have exhausted all the 4 objectives. They can discuss those objectives now using them under general discussion. You can only do that when you are not explicit in your explanation, because you are going to summarize again each of the table you have highlighted, the percentage, you have to interpret them. So the result is just interpreting the result from the table, showing the percentage over 100. So normally it brings general discussion when you have what? Identify the tables, you have gone through the tables analysis. You can bring general discussion. But you have to comment now each of the objectives in a chronological order from objective 1 to 4. Or if there is no room for general discussion, when you have what? Gone through the tables or the frequency or the pie chart, you can bring that one under chapter 5 for summary. You are still going to identify those variables, the tables. You have to see, interpret them, but you are not summarizing them by just writing the percentage. You got from what? From the respective respondents. So it should be done. You have option and option. Either after you have identified those objectives, you can bring general discussions about that. But you are summarizing out there using now just the percentage. For example, the questionnaire you got administered to the respondents, 47% of them agree on this, while the male, 47% of the male disagree, 38% of what? The female disagree. You are just going to look at what? The percentage. You are not going to give again an explicit identification or interpretation of the results for general discussion after identifying the table. Paramount. It is so technical that sometimes students have to take 2-3 months using or writing their chapter 4. It can be the most complex aspect of the write-up and also likely to be bulky because you are exhausting all the questionnaires you have administered to the respondent you collected in line with the objectives you are working. They should correspond. Now, when you have gone through the general discussion, if you want, you can bring about any one objective using one paragraph. One objective for the general discussion using one paragraph. Second objective using another paragraph. Third objective using another paragraph, as the case may be. Or if you want to deviate from that and apply that method in chapter 5, you can do it likewise, but using just the percentage or the frequencies you have got from the respondents. You are not going to also quantify all the tables again. You just take the brackets. You take what? The inputs. You take what? The frequency. You take what? The percentage, and summarize them. So in brief, chapter 1, chapter 4, data presentation and results. Data analysis and results. As I said, is the most technical aspect of it. You have to go in line with the 5 objectives. You quantify them all using tables, using frequencies, using pie chart, as the case may be. As long as you have administered your questionnaire, then it is quantitative research. You have to adopt that method. So chapter 4, in short, is purely innovative, an application of knowledge. Your research knowledge. You have to be oriented. You have to be guided. That is why it is very important when you go through your chapter 4, then you have done with your chapter 5. That is what chapter 4 entails.